Yeah, yes, good afternoon. So Daniel Hall, I'm one of the program leads sitting in the Nuclear Skills Plan. I lead on a number of initiatives within the plan. In fact, if I just quickly reel them out, so you're aware, the leadership schemes, there's two of those, equality, diversity and inclusion, and most pertinent today, the regional hub coordination.
Thank you. Jackie?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jackie Grubb and I'm the CEO and Principal of City College Plymouth, and it's nice to see you all today.
Good.
Afternoon all, I'm Kat Mills. I've been at EDF for about 8 years and I look after construction facilities still. So it's another thing that's coming into Hintsey and Fly as well. I'm going to try and sneak into renewables at the moment as well.
And finally, Phil.
Afternoon. Neil Young, I'm the Global Engineering Capability Director for Babcock. So what does that mean? I'm responsible for people, process and tools for our professional engineering cohort globally. And I also do a lot of work with the Defence Enterprise on people and skills and how we generate those into there, and I'll talk about that later.
Thank you very much. So you'll see up on the screen, there's a slider where we'll collate questions for later. So if you scan the code, you can put the questions in there, and the team are capturing those questions as we come through. So I'm going to start, and Jackie, I'm going to start with you. Okay. Mark has given us an introduction into the task force and that eye-watering number of 40,000 new employees in the nuclear sector. What are the challenges that skills providers are facing in addressing that?
Thank you. Well, in the first instance, it's just really delightful that nuclear is getting to the top of the agenda in terms of priorities. Because when you talk about engineering or manufacturing or marine, people are talking about Arctic windshore or energy, green skills and things like that. So it's about really putting nuclear really at the forefront of everything, because there's a skills gap across the board. But something that's really, really exciting, and Colette did mention it earlier, is about the collaboration and the collaboration in the Southwest. Somebody else did give an example of welding. And if I start on the example of welding, there's an amazing welding centre of excellence at Bridgewater and Taunton College. But actually, several years ago, Babcock came to me and said, actually, what they're delivering at Bridgewater is a totally different type of welding than what we need down in Plymouth and a bit further down the peninsula. So working in partnership and collaboration with Bridgewater and Taunton, but at the same time identifying a new type of welding, we actually worked together to make sure that we had a specific skill set further down in Plymouth and further down into the peninsula. So what I'm trying to say here is, in terms of the impact of the Southwest Hub at the moment, this is about collaboration for learning providers in the first instance, working together. And we've already been talking about co-designing, co-delivery, getting those expert teachers and actually sharing resources, which will have a real impact going forward. But because we are cohesively working together, it means that when we have to identify something separate as well, we have a collaborative approach that we can work together so that there's impact to start bridging that skills gap in nuclear.
Thank you very much. Dan, how does the sort of the speakers before and the skills element, how does it all come together in the hubs?
Yeah, thank you. That gives me an opportunity to probably talk a bit more about the detail. So you've heard quite heavily around why we're all here and why the skills plan is so important, and you've seen from Colette a little bit about what the different initiatives are within the plan. The regional hubs is one that brings all of that together, really. There are 15 different initiatives within the plan, but the regional hub is where the sort of, I like to describe it, is where the rubber meets the road on a lot of those initiatives, and where we really start to see how those are going to work. Within the regional hub initiative, it's slightly different from the rest in that it requires a sponsor to drive it forward. That comes directly from industry. So that's one of our nuclear sector executive council members who have taken the lead, and in this case, of course, it's Babcock and EDF, who have taken the lead to drive this forward, to say, right, this is what we want to do, this is why it's important for us here, and engage with providers and organisations within different regions to really understand what that means. Within the skills plan, we sort of look to try to bucket the different projects into ways that they're ultimately providing benefit back. Are they hitting the key objectives within the plan? Are they really making a difference to that big number that we're really trying to get to? And we look at that in different ways. We look at it from kind of whether or not it's retaining our people. Is it attracting more people in? And you heard heavily from Lynn about how Destination Nuclear is driving that. Are we mobilising our people? Are we getting people to move around and learn and experience and gain greater understanding? Are we diversifying our people? That's a really key one, and one I said before that I'm taking a particular interest in. And are we developing our people? And again, it's the regional hubs that's doing all of those things by being a mechanism for understanding which of the initiatives are most relevant to the specific region that they sit in, which ones are working, which ones need tailoring, and feeding that back into the plan so we can evolve and develop into the future.
Thank you. Can I just ask one bit of detail then? Is the Southwest uniquely different to the others, or is it just got a series of different projects? I'm thinking it's got a massive nuclear power station being built and it's got a Devonport. Is that making it different?
Thank you, Max. That gives me an opportunity to explain what else we have outside of the Southwest Hub, actually, before perhaps comes to that one specifically. So in case you weren't aware, we have 4 active regional hubs now across the plan. As I said before, sponsored by an executive council member. So we have one in the northwest of England, sort of based around Cumbria, sponsored by BAE Systems and the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. We have, of course, the Southwest Hub here, and those are the 2 that have been the longest standing. And we've been sort of piloting this year to really understand the benefit of that, and as I said, how that can feed back into the plan. Most recently, we launched, a hub was launched in the Midlands by Rolls-Royce, and Steve's here representing that, and it's sort of based out of Derby. And we're in the process, or team in the process, Debbie, who's here, also Debbie, who's looking at rolling out a hub in Scotland, a big geographical area, of course, so the way that they'll approach that will differ. And we'll also have early conversations around a hub in Wales and the southeast of England. So to come to your question, I think perhaps more broadly, every hub, given the locations I've just given you, every hub has had to approach the challenge in a different way, understanding the kinds of nuances in the organisations that work in those regions and tailor the approach accordingly. But it's also worth noting that we are just in year 1. We are still in the understand phase. And Nick, who leads the hub with Colette, has spent a lot of time putting together the kind of the plan for the Southwest. What is our strategy going to be? What are our key areas that we're going to focus on, so we can understand what that means for our delivery into the future? So really, I'll be able to answer your question better in as we go on. But I'd say absolutely, it's needed to be tailored specifically for what matters to the region.
Thank you. And specific in the region is a nuclear power station that isn't in year 1. It's a bit further down the line. So, Kat, what have we learned from HPC, and what could we take across the rest of the region and more broadly across the rest of the UK so that we can address some of these skills issues?
Yeah, well, I think we had a lot of learning through about a decade ago. We thought, right, let's build a new nuclear power station in the UK. So we had a huge challenge in terms of understanding what that meant, who we were going to need and when we were going to need them. So we've been learning over the last 10 years, 12 years, going on a bit, what the demand plan looks like to build that station through different phases, because you go through the construction phases, that the curves look very different. The level of collaboration that we had through that process has been phenomenal across the region. We've been working, obviously, with ETC, across other education providers, across government, and really learning as we go, but putting that learning into planning and making sure that we've got a really good handle on what the demand plan will look like for the next project, whether that next project is the Paulus Carbon Coffee for Sizewell, but also for other smaller projects that will be coming around in the region as well. So we've got a really good understanding of how the collaboration can work across the various different parties and what that takes and what that means. We've got a good model of demand planning for projects, which we can then share and put in play. We've got the physical infrastructure there as well. I mean, I'm not going to put welding because I think we've talked enough, but let's also talk about mechanical and electrical, the centre of excellence that we've been building, the models they've been building around things like the Hinkley Sport Officer programs that have been able to get out into the communities and get people in and train them through to get work ready, to get site ready, and then go into very specialist career paths. So all of that together, we've got the physical infrastructure in the region that's there to share for people to come and people to use. We've got really good collaborative models. We've got good social engagement models. So, as we come to the back end of the Hinkley project, it then making sure that we've got the right collaboration in place to share how we've done that, and to look at the demand plan across the region. I think one of the things that we're looking at in a lot more depth now is what is that demand plan across industry, not just within nuclear, but across energy as well. What are those overlap? You can lots about foundations and talk about skills from nuclear plants, not specifically nuclear, that could go into other industry as well across energy. So if we can get a really good view of what is the long-term demand in this region, we've got the assets underpinning it to make sure that we can meet that. They're starting to look more at that labour market intelligence, what's out there, who's already in the market, and then matching those things together. And some of the work that's already happening in the hub is making great use of that. So yeah, if we can continue that collaboration, continue to use those assets, then I think that's where Hinkley continue to lead that legacy. I can't not say the word legacy, can I? But yeah, across the well.
Thank you. And Neil, we've heard from Captain Chris Cochrane about the sort of globalization of the defence element and how Australia is very much like the UK, yeah, except for the climate. Yeah. But obviously, there's that competition between industry sectors, but also now the globalization and internationalization of very capable people could go up different places to experience, different careers, etc. How is that emerging in the defence sector? Because, we've seen some of those targets today and they are, again, eye-watering. So how is Babcock responding to that?
Yeah, and it comes back to demand data, etc. And you look at the defence sector, we have long-term contracts. So the submarine contract is a long-term contract. There's 100 years of work there, effectively. You look at Future Combat Air System, the pilots of those planes aren't still at school at present, etc. So you've got that longevity of those programs and some really, really interesting technologies for people to work on. But there are barriers to that as well. So, and it's very much that we sort of said in here, the perception of nuclear, and then you put on the perception of defence into this against a STEM and engineering background where, of people that do a STEM or engineering degree, only 1 in 9 go to do a STEM or engineering career. You've got to get those hurdles all the way through, etc., and make yourself attractive in that area. You go in and look at an engineer that wants to, come into a defence area, and if they haven't already had somebody in the family that's worked there, our statistics said they're quite unlikely of choosing defence. It's very negative. Just yesterday in the Times newspaper, there was an article about defence companies stopping going to careers fair at the university to the protests, etc. They're real. We've got to protect our people as well. But we can't let ourselves stop that of selling the great careers, the great opportunities, and the national endeavour for peace and security that we have in our areas. So we've really got to go out and put that. And the only way you can do that is do that in collaboration together. So whether that's us looking at it in the UK national endeavour of what we need, or whether it's done with AUKUS and looking at the Australians, their spats and their barriers are exactly the same. I just did a review in South Africa. Their percentages from people wanting to go into engineering degrees to then going into engineering careers to then going into these areas, exactly the same across there. So this isn't a unique thing we have in the UK. So it's our job to sell the benefits to everybody of the careers in nuclear, in defence effectively, and what benefit that brings to the national endeavour on this one, and the global safety and security that a thing like AUKUS brings. And to be able to allow us to communicate that together and work together, because you talk about things like disciplines, career frameworks, competences, etc., and all the companies have their own. They're all the same, ultimately. We haven't invented anything. I know when we started with DNE and all of this, I just gave the Babcock onesie. I said, everyone else's will be the same. And they are. There's slight differences to that, but the majority, the 80% part is the same. We try and create the 100% solution every single time. We should break it into manageable chunks and say, for the nuclear and that skills for nuclear skills, there's a really good way of saying what you need to do specifically and what you need to do more general. And I think that's where government have a place to play as well, in terms of not requiring a task force, but generating the skills at an ongoing basis for the not there, in terms of the country and what they need.
Thank you. I'm just going to go back to the collaboration word, Dan, if that's okay, because obviously collaboration's key and we're all here today collaborating, but how does collaboration turn into doing in the next year and beyond that?
I guess I'll be looking to the regional hub to... the plan is about, and Mark regularly says this, I know, and I hope you don't mind me quoting you, Mark, but regularly says that we're here on behalf of the sector, not for the sector here. So we're here to enable and provide a mechanism for delivering what the sector needs in order to meet the skills challenges. The skills challenges there, it's in our base. It's very sort of known and aware. So we're here to try and resolve that challenge. But by doing so, it's about making the most of what already exists, bringing organisations together, bringing initiatives together, and being a mechanism for that. So I think it would perhaps be slightly naive to suggest that lots of positive activity wouldn't have happened anyway, and there'll be organisations, and we regularly find this when we sort of have conversations around it, particular activities within the plan. Companies and organisations are already doing a lot of this, but they're doing it, like we just described, in their own way, perhaps. What the skills plan does is brings people together, brings organisations together. And as you said, that's all about collaboration. And that's across the board. And I think the skills plan by definition does that through this charter. And then that filters down through the delivery board, which is sort of the governance structure, and then the committees that underpin each of the initiatives. What the regional hubs, however, really get the opportunity to do beyond that is, which the plan can't do centrally, is reach further, is engage with suppliers and training providers and organisations that sit outside of the plan. The plan was pulled together at a time with organisations. It was in response to this need, but there's a lot more that work within and around our sector that still need to be engaged. And it's the regional hubs that really provide the mechanism and the opportunities to do that we can't do centrally.
Thank you. Yeah, please do.
I think there's a lot around one voice, and from an educational provider point of view, funding and resources is huge. And just talking to Jake earlier around the vocational route compared to an academic route, and the funding, he's had to just fund his own degree. So there's something about collaboration and one voice that being taken seriously by government and other stakeholders too. Because we have to bear in mind our students, their parents, the employers, the government, the community, and those are all different types of people who are looking and thinking differently. So this Southwest Hub will create one voice so that we have a clear message, whether it's funding, whether it's an asked or resource or anything. And that's really, really powerful when stakeholders, employers, education providers, the community work together to make that magic happen.
Absolutely. And I'm going to just finalise this panel with a couple of quick fire questions. So whoever goes first doesn't have the same amount of time to think about it. Right, so who am I going to pick on? Let's pick on Neil. 3 years from now, what does success look like?
Success looks like in 3 years, we've got the workforce that we need coming through. We might not have the workforce that we need now. I think there's still work to do there, but we're within striking distance of what we need. So we're not, the first question at a bid review is not where you're going to get the engineering resource from. The first question that's done is going to be how we deploy that workforce onto our different projects. And I think that's the real success.
Thank you. Brilliant. Kat? I don't think this microphone's working, by the way, but you're casting your voice very well.
Okay, come on back. So same question, what does success look like? I think for me, I'm going to answer from a different angle here, is opening the diversity pathways wider. I think we are seeing some great talent coming through from various different areas. I think the work that we're reaching out with Destination Nuclear is fantastic at that attraction and getting people from all backgrounds. And I would love to see that broader. We're getting some new great diverse apprentices through coming through that pipeline. I want to see that figure. I want to see, 3 years may be ambitious, but I'd love to see parity when we're coming through at all levels, using the tools that we've got to get out there and just bringing a wide range of people through into the industry.
Thank you, Jackie.
For me, today we have a purpose and a plan. In a few years' time, we need to be able to measure the impact of that plan, and whether that's bridging the skills gap and creating more opportunities for apprenticeships and boot camps and things like that, or reducing climate change and the carbon footprint, bringing in digital technology, and most passionately from me, bridging the parity gap of social mobility.
Thank you. Last word, Dan?
Well, it sort of covers off the back of that one. I think really in 3 years, we want to be able to have a much more rapid feedback loop. We want to know if what we're doing is making a difference and how we can tweak and change that. And probably from a central plan perspective as well, I'd say what would be really successful is if we're doing less. If the activities are already bedded in and they're working and it become an almost business as usual, that would be a big mark of success on the plan.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Can you give the panel a round of applause, please?